Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this conversation, this podcast in many ways, with regards to the African American Diabetes Association. Well, I'm going to act like a host today, and I'm going to be hosting this conversation during, yes, Juneteenth 2024, essentially a conversation, a roundtable conversation with three great people. Well, two great people, and I'm going to include myself. And again, I'm Leon Rock, and we have with us today Barbara King, co-founder of the African American Diabetes Association, and Anthony Banks, yes, the chairperson of the board of the African American Diabetes Association. Both of them and I are here in a roundtable conversation about diabetes, but celebrating at the same time Juneteenth. Yep. And when we celebrate Juneteenth, we celebrate the fact that there is freedoms, but those freedoms have cost us in so many ways health challenges and health disparities going back to the time of, yeah, unfortunately, slavery. So let's talk. And Barbara and Anthony, welcome as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we said we're going to have this roundtable conversation. Let me start it off with a question. Has diabetes been impacted in many ways by the foods we eat, the exercise that we get or don't get, and in many ways, the obesity that has challenged our communities? And actually, let me throw in another one, the challenge of healthcare systems that don't seem to have an interest in addressing Black folks the way we need to be addressed. I threw a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Yeah.
So
I'd just like to start off by saying basically that, the latest statistics show that there are approximately 35 million people in the United States with who have diabetes. About 8 million of those, there are about 8 million people with diabetes are basically undiagnosed, meaning, in other words, they're walking around with pre-diabetes without even realizing. Diabetes remains a significant health concern, with an estimated over 2 million people diagnosed each year. Each year, just let that sink in. Each year, an additional 2 million people are diagnosed with diabetes, according to the latest statistics. And we all know, of course, that the prevalence of diabetes is higher among certain ethnic groups in our communities, in our society. The prevailing ones being Hispanic ethnic group, and of course the African American ethnic group, which we are all part of. So what does that mean? That means that there is a real acute problem in our communities with regard to diabetes. As Leon inferred, our diabetes, to some degree, is a result of our socioeconomic condition, as a result of the various inequities that we as a community are forced to endure with regard to healthcare and providing of healthcare, and it reaches at every level, from the medicines that we take, the pharmaceuticals that we sometimes can and cannot have access to the kinds of programs that exist out there that aren't really culturally relevant enough to really enable us to take advantage of the various programs and things that exist out there that are supposedly designed to help us mitigate those circumstances. So, yeah, our traditionally, the things that we eat as a community, as a people, have contributed to our diabetes. Why? Because we're often forced to procure foods that are economically viable for us, because of our lower socioeconomic status and the fact that a lot of times we live in what's referred to as food deserts. In other words, we don't necessarily get access to the fresh produce and foods that exist in some other communities that have a much easier access to larger food stores and entities that provide those kinds of fresh foods and fresh vegetables that are so key in helping us to maintain our glycemic levels and to help us deal with the issues of diabetes. I know I said a lot. I know that Barbara is a person who deals with these kinds of issues all the time, and especially in her personal life. And I'm sure she can tell us about some of the issues that she has dealt with regard to her diabetes and her challenges with her type 1 diabetes. So I'd like to hear from Barbara.
Thank you. Barbara King. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I had a total pancreatectomy, which is removal of my pancreas. And so diabetes have really affected my life just with the complications of diabetes. I always say that, yes, food plays a big, big part in diabetes and controlling our diabetes. I always share with Rock, and I make a joke of it sometimes, but I love gummy worms. And I tried my hardest just to, it was a battle, just not wanting the sugar. And so I noticed my hemoglobin A1C very high, up in the 12s. And I said, Barbara, the gummy worms. And so once I noticed I cut a lot of my sugar out, because I always said, oh, I'm a type 1, I got my insulin, I could just give myself a little bit more insulin, and then that will help me, bring my sugar down. So, but it didn't change my hemoglobin A1C.
Right.
So, as, we talk, it's very important that we realize that what we eat does play a role in our blood sugar levels. I like something Anthony said about, realizing about, our community being a food desert. And yes, I always bring back that if you go into a community of color, you are guaranteed to find a liquor store on every corner. Guaranteed, you will find a liquor store. Sometimes you'll find 1, 2, you go on 4 corners, you got a liquor store on each one. And so how can you find a liquor store that damages our community, but then you can't put us a Stop and Shop that sells decent foods and not rotten foods, a Shaw's supermarket that's never really in the community of color. And when you do find those stores that service the African American and people of brown and Black color, the foods are not fresh. I go into a community that's predominantly Caucasian, and the fruit and the vegetables is so beautiful. I don't see not one rotten video or one rotten food product on their shelves.
Right.
And if it is on there, it's by mistake and it gets taken off quickly. But when you go into the African American community, you can never find your choice of wanting good food. And so that's my take on that.
Absolutely right, Barbara. And I share your concern. And that concern not only extends to our food providers in our communities, but even our pharmaceuticals. We've been faced with many communities, particularly here in Boston, where even the drugstores have been closing down and changing locations, which then presents another problem for our senior citizens and our people who need the various pharmaceuticals that a drugstore provides, to have to go further to get the medicines and the care that they need than they used to. So it's a situation that is prevalent in minority communities and not so much so in other communities. And that's the challenge that we face in this country in terms of the inequities and the disparities of healthcare and the access to healthcare and foods that Leon referred to earlier. Diabetes is also, as we all know, one of the leading causes of kidney failure, lower limb amputations, and adult onset blindness and neuropathy. I'm sure we all know family members and friends who suffer from neuropathy, that pain in the feet or the itching or the numbness. And some of whom have problems with their eyesight, blindness issues, impending blindness issues. I myself have been told by my doctor that, my eyes are okay right now, but there's some evidence because of my diabetes that, that I will have someday have problems with my eyes from cataract formation that are forming right now. So, part of the problem that we have is that our people do not get the access to care that will help them to counteract those things soon enough so that it makes a difference in their life. It makes a difference in the overall healthcare picture. And so that's an issue that exists in our communities that we at the African American Diabetes Association wants to shine a light on. We want to shine a light on those issues and inform and educate our members of our community about the things that they can do to be more proactive and to encourage their healthcare givers to pay attention to the issues and the symptoms that they're experiencing so that they can have a better chance at addressing those issues at an earlier stage before they get to the acute stage where treatment is much more problematic.
Let's take a walk backwards for a second at going back to Juneteenth and then going forward just a little bit beyond Juneteenth to 1939.
My mother's
Let's
birth.
talk your mother's birth. Wow, 1939, good year.
Yes.
But in some ways, a bad year. Because in 1939, something was going on in African American communities and actually in America. 1939 was a time in which we were out of slavery and into segregation. Also in 1939 was a time in relationship to diabetes in which a organization, not to be named, but to be understood, a organization came into existence. An organization that was supposed to address diabetes across the country. But in 1939, unfortunately, segregation existed. And in 1939, most national organizations, health-related organizations, were segregationist. Many of them have apologized for their segregationist ways. But the fact of the matter is, in the African American community, we were not informed about diabetes the way others were. And in fact, because of segregationist policies of national organizations, they failed to educate us about diabetes. So what happened was we learned through, in many ways, folklore about diabetes.
Absolutely.
Mama has diabetes, and actually we didn't call it diabetes. We used to call it the sugar.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And so if there were some Black doctors that existed or Black nurses that existed, we learned about that experience, the diabetes experience, through folklore. That's through a conversation about grandma having the sugar, grandpa having the sugar, auntie having the sugar, our daughter having the sugar, but we didn't know what the sugar meant. We just knew that there was a disease called the sugar.
That's right.
And Black folks were getting their legs amputated at massive amounts.
Yes.
Why? Because of institutional racism that didn't educate us about diabetes and the fact that we didn't need to be eating all those breads, all those carbohydrates, all that sugar, and it was killing us. And today, we find ourselves in that same situation. Everything has changed, but nothing has changed. I continue to say you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig.
That's right.
So there's a whole bunch of folks saying that they're woke now. I'm talking about national organizations that are saying they're woke about the need to address diabetes in the African American community. But they have put lipstick on it to say that they are woke and they're going to put Black images on their website. But in reality, it's still a pig.
Yeah.
Well,
so I say all that to say, what you all think about what I just said? And am I right or am I wrong or am I kind of sort of not there yet?
You there? You right on point. And that's what's being done in our society today. That they're putting the lipstick on that pig, but that lipstick ain't coming off, right? So they're not doing nothing about it. They're stuck in their own ways. That's what they're doing. They're stuck. They don't know how to treat us as individuals because they still look at us as not equal to them. So they're still, even though we're in 2024, I feel like in some ways the medical system is still stuck in the 1939. Some of these doctors are still coming in and not treating us people of color the way that we should be getting treated. And I can speak to that because I could say, I have an insulin pump. And if anyone knows, Rock knows, Anthony knows, I fought for many years. Now, I was a diabetic when they took my pancreas out. So why did I not qualify for an insulin pump? I don't produce insulin. So I needed something to give me insulin constantly. Denied. Why did I get denied? And you know what took me to fight was a Caucasian person said to me, Barbara, it's because of your race. You are not getting that insulin pump. My daughter didn't even need it, and she got the insulin pump. But you know why they were so free to give it to her? Because the color of her skin. So why wasn't I, as a person that could have benefited or is benefiting from it now because I fought? But I shouldn't have had to fight like that. But I fought because of the color of my skin. If my diabetes would have been taken seriously when they took my pancreas out, as Anthony mentioned, the complications of diabetes, the neuropathy in the legs, I suffer severely, the eye damage. But if I would have known and been treated earlier for this diabetes, then I know for a fact I would not be suffering the way I am suffering today. And it's because of the lack of the proper health care that I was given. And yes, do I contribute it to the color of my skin? Absolutely. I contributed it all to the color of my skin. And that's why the African American diabetes is so important to me. because I must fight. If I don't fight for myself, I'm gonna fight for myself, but I need to fight for others too that feel that they don't have the voice.
Well,
That's excellent.
yeah, you said a lot right there, Barbara, in so many ways, because my own personal experience is the same.
Absolutely.
I remember when I first found out that I have diabetes, and actually I was kind of sort of miseducated by my physician by telling me that diabetes, I would have it for the rest of my life, and that essentially I would need to reach out to the national organization to learn more about diabetes. And that, I did. I actually reached out to the national organization. I reached out to the national organization, and actually, they didn't have any information at the time about African Americans and diabetes on their website. That's the reality. And so I went up the chain of command in the organization to learn more about diabetes and why they didn't have it. Why didn't they have any information about Blacks and diabetes, specifically for Black men with diabetes? Because, men and women are kind of wired differently in so many different ways. There's a difference. There's a lifestyle difference between men and women. I wanted to know, as a Black man, what did I need to do? And then when I learned as well that later on that there was this new technology that came out. It's called the CGM monitor, essentially monitoring your blood sugar levels. And I went to my doctor to get the CGM monitor. He told me at the time, I'd love to fill the paperwork is just too much. That's what he told me. The paperwork was too much to be able to get the CGM monitor. I'm like, but doc, I need it. Well, keep on pricking your finger. You'll be fine. I was pricked out. I was tired of pricking my finger. And there was so many other people, I'm sure, tired of pricking their finger, and they wanted to be able to control their diabetes.
That's
I
right.
say all that to say that the system is wrecked. It was wrecked then, and it's wrecked now. And I'm so glad, Barbara, and I'm so glad that you and I and a bunch of other board members, and now Anthony, as leading the effort to actually change that system.
Absolutely.
We need change
Absolutely.
desperately,
Yes.
Absolutely.
desperately. And that's why the African American Diabetes Association exists.
Absolutely.
Because there has been institutions that have ignored us. And we're tired of being ignored. That's it, and that's all. We're tired of being ignored. And actually, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Amen. Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. And you
That's
know what?
right.
On top of that, there's another level that we have to be concerned with, and that has to do with data acquisition and information that they get about us. The whole rage, all the rage nowadays is about AI, artificial intelligence, and it's being used in a number of ways, but it's also being used to because they're using existing data that has existing information and past information. It's been talked about that AI is actually being used in systems to help them be actually able to deny access and care to groups of folks, because the information that the AI has is based on information from the past and present, and it has present day biases of the people who ultimately created it and charted it. So as they say in the computer world, you have bad data in, you get bad data out.
Absolutely.
that information that they're utilizing and some AI applications is being used in itself to help deny Black and minority people the access that they need to address the issues around their health and to deal with the comorbidities and the issues that we suffer on a disproportionate level. And so one way that we would want to advocate the remedying of that is that we have to get minority folks and Black folks who are experienced in coding and utilizing and developing AI systems to to make sure that the information that they're utilizing is not skewed or biased by present day reality, present day information that is being utilized in some AI systems to help them to deny in group the access to information and knowledge to Black and minority folks based on AI's implicit bias because it was coded by somebody else who had that bias. So it's a level of understanding, it's a level of engagement that we at the AADA also wants to put under our to-do list to address, because those are ways in which systemically change has to occur so that Black and poor people have a better opportunity and are being considered fairly in the attainment of their healthcare needs.
So let me ask this. We've talked about the challenges, and we're very clear on that. There are major challenges, and we haven't even talked at length about all the challenges that Black folks face. But let's get to some of the solutions, some of the self-advocacy solutions that we need to take upon ourselves moving forward. If you were going to recommend 2 or 3 things that Black folks need to do to ensure that they manage their diabetes, become more healthy, and self-advocate for themselves, what are those 3 things that you'd recommend? Barbara?
First, I'd like to say something that I would like all to do is not to forget about the individuals that are incarcerated that is dealing with diabetes, because diabetes affects them also. And if you can imagine, if we're not getting the treatment out here, the kind of treatment they're getting in there. So saying that, I just want everyone to just, pray for them, just think about them when we're thinking about diabetes, and just know that there's others that don't get the support. But one of the things I would say is changing your eating habits is so important. We have to change our eating habits because, they had this saying where your body is what you eat. And it truly is what you eat. So if you put junk in it, then junk's gonna come out in your results, your test results. And so, I try my best. It was difficult. I'm not gonna say it's easy. But when you're thinking of life, your life or death, it becomes a little bit easier if you want to survive. And so me changing my eating habits, me walking, keeping away from stress. I know I'm saying a lot of things, but stress plays a role, and we all got stress. And so we just got to learn different ways. If we need therapy, get mental health therapy if you need it to deal with diabetes, because diabetes affects you mentally. It affects you mentally, it drains you. So those are some of the things that I say that's very important. And please advocate for yourself. If you can, reach out to the AADA and we will try and help and fight for you. But Advocate. If you got a family member, a mother, a sibling that can't advocate for themselves, help them out. Advocate for them. We all need someone to advocate. I tell you, I will advocate for myself because I am going to fight. I'm determined to live, but you got to speak up. Doctors want you to sit there and say nothing. If you're a diabetic, you don't need to be seeing your primary care provider. You need to be seeing an endocrinologist or someone that deals with diabetes. Your primary cannot help you with your diabetes. They should be sending you to someone that will help you. I think that was a lot.
That was a beautiful lot. You were very clear and very precise, and that preciseness was critical. Endocrinologist, a
Yes.
diabetes subject matter expert that knows everything that you need to know about diabetes and can guide you through that self-management or management of diabetes process. You are so right. I'm glad that you pointed it out. There's one other thing before we get to Anthony. There's one other thing that was critical that you said about the fact that with people that are incarcerated, those brothers and sisters that have diabetes or at risk of diabetes because they may be in a pre-diabetes stage, all the prison industrial complex does is feed them carbs. Carbs is their diet. And we got to educate our brothers and sisters that, hey, guess what? Limit those carbs. If that's what they're giving you, limit the amount of intake. We got to, in many ways, develop special projects and programs for our brothers and sisters
Absolutely.
that are in prison. And then there's one other thing that I picked up on based on what you mentioned about the incarcerated people. There's another set of, in many ways, incarcerated. I should be ashamed myself for saying that they're incarcerated, but there are a group of people that have diabetes and they're juveniles
Yes.
that are incarcerated
Yes.
that have diabetes. And there are juveniles that are not incarcerated, but in some ways, depending on what school you go to,
Yeah.
they also have diabetes, and the school systems are not equipped to address their diabetes.
Absolutely.
So we got a lot of work to do. And I say all that to say, well, if the school departments aren't even addressing their educational needs, how are they addressing their health needs?
Right.
Anthony, what you thinking?
I think that everything that's been said is right on target, right on target. Barbara's observations are key and are based in reality and based in her reality and the things that she's experienced. I particularly liked her point about encouraging folks to see specialists like an endocrinologist. She's right. If you don't have a personal care physician, a PCP, who is willing to refer you to an endocrinologist, whose very job is to look at the endocrine system or the gland system of your body and to check your hormones and to assist you with diabetes diagnosis, then they're not doing their job properly. Black folks should not be afraid of seeking the help of endocrinologists, of cardiologists. So few of us have a cardiologist as part of our medical team. Cardiologist is very important. They're going to check your condition of your heart and your circulation system, and they can give you keys and clues about what you can do to improve those systems in your body so that you can lessen your chances of succumbing or suffering from the symptoms and the problems that comes along with diabetes and prediabetes. you know, for me, one of the things the things that I like to advocate for folks is not just, as Barbara said, using healthy food choices, but activity. Activity is so important. Being able to get out of that house, get away from that television, being able to get away from the computer screen that we're on right now, but being able to just get out and move. You got to get up and move. You got to go for a walk, go walk around the block, walk in the park. It's so important for us to exercise and get whatever exercise that you can do. I myself like to swim. I try and go to the local YMCA and swim. I like to go at least 2 to 3 times a week. But if I don't go at least that, I try and at least go 1 or 2 days a week. And it helps me tremendously. It helps me tremendously. And you don't have to be, a fish in the pool. You just need to get in the water and just very slowly and very easily, just go up back and forth in the pool, do your laps, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 laps, each time you go, and you will experience marvelous results, and you'll experience marvelous benefits from doing that. But I encourage people to pick out some kind of opportunity, some kind of exercise regimen that fits them. All of us, some of us have bad knees and bad backs and bad ankles and that kind of thing from walking around on the concrete and the asphalt of our many communities across this country. Or most of us are Black guys who played basketball on courts back in the day when we were younger guys, and now we're suffering from bad knees and bad backs and ankles because of all that time that we did spend doing that. So you need to pick out a activity that is uniquely suited for you and your particular condition right now at the time. And that can be anything from just taking a walk around the community, taking advantage of a treadmill if you can go to a local YMCA or club or something like that. A lot of these places have discounts for older Americans that you can utilize to get yourself a membership if you need to, and to experience getting out and moving and getting building yourself a little exercise regimen that will help you tremendously in your efforts. So those are some of the things that I like to advocate. But most importantly, we cannot also ignore the role that faith plays in our lives. We need to. We are a spiritual people, and we need to recognize that and understand that, and take some time to meditate and be at one with our God and our benefactor, and ask Him to help us to do the right thing in our lives and get better exercise and enjoy life. We need to learn how to enjoy life and get out there and use this body that the good Lord gave us to sustain ourselves and to provide an environment that we can grow and develop in. So those are a few of the things that I like to talk about. Social interaction with other people is very important. You need to be able to get out and interact with people, and that in itself will provide opportunities for you to get out and move and get about and interact with people in a way that can be beneficial for you mentally, emotionally, and socially.
Wow, you said a lot, Brother Banks. That's what I'm talking about. Barbara, Anthony talked about getting out and moving and exercise, doing it. But in some communities, it's not as easy to do.
That's right. That's very true.
Particularly in low-income communities that may be in many ways dangerous.
That's right.
What
That's a fact.
should people do to actually, what are alternatives, as an example, to getting exercise in, Barbara?
I think the alternative is, and I know, as Rock stated, sometimes the community, the environment that we live in, it can be rough and it can be dangerous sometimes and fearful.
That's right.
One thing that I like is trying to walk with a partner, walking with someone. But you know, walking with someone and being fearful of walking in your community is two different things if you're trying to dodge gunshots or bullets or whatever it is. So I just think in the house, I always say, you know, if you have to walk around, do some walking in your house. It don't hurt you. Do some stretching, you know, get up and just try to move, because, you know, some people, especially I try to think of the elderly, and we have to be able to teach them to be able to, okay, you know what, you don't have to get out there and go and walk. You could teach them walk in the hallway, go out there, walk in the hallway or their hallway or in their apartment, lifting their legs up just so their legs don't get stiff on them. And if they're doing that every day, it's better than doing nothing
That's
at
right.
all.
That's right.
Moving their arms, showing them, just doing circular motions in their arms, you know, lifting their shoulders up and down. Little small things, it helps.
That's right.
You know, we might feel like it's not enough, but it's better than not doing anything at all. You know, Anthony mentioned swimming. I love walking, but one thing, I am with the diabetic neuropathy, I know how having that affects my walking. And so with me loving walking, it's difficult sometimes. But what I do is I get up in my house and I start just walking around. Even if I got to find something to clean and it ain't nothing to clean, just to move, because I don't want to lose my walking ability.
That's
So
right.
in order to do that, I have to move.
You know, and that's a great point about just doing it, even if it's in your house. I was at an event, AADA was at an event at a church just recently. And one of the church members said, I get out often. And what I do is every morning I get up. You know what I do? Because of my neighborhood not being relatively safe to walk in. And she said, that's my reality, is that it's not safe. But what I do is I go to the, what do you call it? The gym, or I actually go to the mall and I walk around the mall. I go for an hour in the mall because the mall for me is my safe place. It's
Yes.
a place with a whole bunch of people, and
Yeah.
I just get my walk on, and then I come home and I do my regular activities, you know, my senior activities, because she joins a senior center
Yeah.
too. But she walks in the mall every day except
Wow.
Sunday. And Sunday is her grace period. Sunday is her day of reflection. Sunday is her day, as Anthony mentioned, of faith, where she goes to church. And so, in between that time, every day, for 6 days, that's what she does. 6 days a week, she walks an hour a day. And that's what's recommended, right?
That's
About 20
beautiful.
minutes at minimum a
That's
day.
beautiful.
But she got a strategy. She's saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to my local mall. I get in the car
And she
and
and she
go
got an
to
air conditioning environment and everything.
exactly. And then
Exactly.
she was explaining to me, she had a long conversation with me. She says, and in the winter is the best time
It's
because
the
when it
best time.
snows, I just go to the mall
Yeah.
and I don't have to worry because there's no
Right.
snow inside the mall.
There you go.
That's
There you
right.
go. How about that? That's smart.
We
Very,
come up with strategies that work. We
that's right.
have to. That's what we're talking about. Coming up with strategies that work for our community. That's why I love AADA. I love the African American Diabetes Association. I love the leadership of the African American Diabetes Association because you all are doing it. You're doing the work. You're having the conversations with people, and you're important to our livelihood. You know, diabetes is a life and death situation for many. I
That's
know
right.
it was for me and
Yeah,
still remains a life and death
absolutely.
situation.
That's right.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Mm.
Companies that are making a whole bunch of money and companies that shouldn't be charging outrageous sums of dollars and cents
Mm.
to keep us alive.
Yes.
When I go and hey, guess what? I'm a diabetic, so I require insulin. And the insulin, if I didn't have insurance, I look at the cost of the
Oh,
insulin. My insulin costs $1,500 a month.
Wow.
mhm.
$1,500. I pay $100 for the insulin that the insurance covers the other amount.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have insurance,
Can you imagine?
Yes.
I would probably be a dead person.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
And if Obamacare didn't exist, there's a whole bunch of other folks. Or in Massachusetts, and I know both of you all are based in Massachusetts, if there was not a Mass Health, there would be a whole bunch of other folks that
Yeah.
Yeah.
wouldn't be in existence.
Absolutely.
What do we need to do to address this issue? Because I guess the current president has done what he needs to do to bring it down to $35. But even $35 for someone on fixed income is a challenge.
Yeah.
It may not sound like a whole bunch to us, but for
Yep.
someone that is at the poverty level or below the
That's right.
poverty level, $35 is a make or a breaker. That makes them to make a decision to if they'll
Yeah.
use half of an insulin
Yeah.
versus fully. And you've heard the stories.
Yeah.
Sure have.
Yeah.
Sure have.
Absolutely. Because that $35, is now has to be the decision has to be made whether they can spend that $35 on their medicine, or if they have to spend that $35 on the upkeep of their life in terms of their bills, their food, their gas, their all the things that we have to pay on a regular basis, and I'm just a firm believer that we need to get these pharmaceutical companies to make basic philosophical and uh, uh, policy decisions that have a significant impact on the cost of life-saving medications, because they've already made billions of dollars on the development and the production of these medicines, some of which the groundwork was already laid for them years ago, when they got it for next to nothing. So, we need to encourage the government and pharmaceuticals to develop programs and develop access to these life-saving medications that enable people who need it the most and who have been most disenfranchised by the current healthcare systems and pharmaceutical delivery systems to benefit from the providing of these medicines for people who desperately need it and who cannot and not on that socioeconomic level where $35 is not a problem for them. We just need to make these kinds of medications available to people, so that we can cut down on the cost, the millions of dollars that it's costing, billions of dollars that it's costing this country every year, taking care of folks who otherwise wouldn't need to be taken care of if they had equal and easy access to the medications they need to sustain themselves.
I totally agree. And I'll share quickly issue that I have with the pharmaceutical companies regarding insulin. I was going through a bad time in my life financially, and my insulin was costing me a lot of money. And so I called the company that was producing my insulin because I was referred to them, and they said they have this program where they will give you some insulin for people that can't afford it. I called them. This is exactly what they said to me. They said, unfortunately, we can only give you one bottle of insulin for the rest of, like, they could never give me another bottle after I use this one. It's like a voucher, I guess. You use that one and you can't get any more. I was literally stunned. Now, I will die if I don't have insulin. I will die.
Right.
And so to hear that, it just, it hurted. I cried, and all I could do is pray.
Yeah.
You know, something worked out, you know, because I had faith, but you can imagine the people that don't have the faith and just give up and say, you know what? I can't, there's nothing I can do. And then we wonder why people are skimping on their insulin, why they're not getting better, because you don't want to use too much to go, because then if you use too much insulin and you don't have enough for the next month, now it's an issue because the pharmacy will say, we can't fill your prescription early.
And that in turn ends up costing society more money.
Exactly.
Taking care of those folks.
Exactly. And so that's an issue for me. So I feel like all of this, it's nothing but a moneymaker.
That's right.
It's ways to get money out of people. It's ways to continue to keep us suffering. And yes, we have to fight. We have to fight, because this is just, I mean, it shouldn't be about, these are lives we're talking about. We're not talking about no dead livestock. We're talking about human beings that deserve treatment, that deserve to be treated equally, and not because of the color of our skin. The pharmaceutical companies, they don't even offer enough to African American people to do studies on medication. What about us? We should be a part of that. So we have to start asking ourselves, why are we being neglected in the pharmaceutical companies? Why? You know, they're putting all this money into these big corporations that, when you look at the data and the statistics, it shows that African American and people of color suffer the most from diabetes. Why is that money not going into the people of color? Why? You're giving it to these organizations that don't even help the people of color. So I better just stop, because I've been said some names I shouldn't say. But go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you, Barbara and Anthony, you all have been amazing. This has been an amazing conversation about important issues that impact us.
Yes.
Yeah. During a celebration of Juneteenth, a celebration of the emancipation of African Americans that didn't know it at the time, here we are again, not knowing it, not knowing the importance and the challenge of diabetes and its impact on African Americans. But Barbara and Anthony, you have been making sure that we know it, and we celebrate you. I want to thank you all for being part of this conversation today. And for our listeners, you can always contact us at AfricanAmericanDiabetes.org. Again, that website is AfricanAmericanDiabetes.org. Is there any closing comments from Anthony and Barbara at this time? Because guess what? I think I've already made that closing comment on my part. But Barbara and Anthony, closing comments?
I just want to say happy Juneteenth. Enjoy, be safe, and just remember, it is not over for us. We still have to fight. We have to fight. So even though we were, as they say, freed, we're not free. We are not free until we have equal rights. Equal rights medically, we have to have equal rights. And when they say that we got equal rights, then guess what? We could say, job well done to the system.
Amen. Amen. I agree with Barbara's sentiments. I'd also like to say, as well, happy Juneteenth to all of our friends and family. Enjoy yourself. You know, this is a festive time. Eat a lot of good food, but make some smart choices as well. Eat some vegetables and eat some foods that are good for you. You know, part of the problem with our diet is that, you know, we eat the same things all the time, and so let's develop a habit of varying our diet. Let's develop a habit of drinking lots of water instead of always the Kool-Aid and the sweet stuff that we like to enjoy and embark on. But you know, water is such a great ingredient and thing for us to drink. So I would encourage us to, yes, enjoy our traditional meals, our traditional foods, because that's what makes us who we are. But keep in mind the importance and the necessity of varying our diets. Let's start eating a lot more vegetables and stop drinking good, clean water to help our digestive systems navigate the foods that we're eating. And also, let's come together as a community and as a people and be thankful for each other, be grateful for each other, and to thank the good Lord for all that we have that He has provided for us. But He also provides us with common sense and a desire to get the job done and to do the things that we're supposed to do to sustain ourselves. And that's what using our good common sense, God-given ability to think properly and think rightly is all about. So happy Juneteenth, everyone, and get out there and enjoy the day. And remember that we here at the African American Diabetes Association stand ready to help educate and advocate for you and your issues around diabetes and other comorbidities that go along with diabetes.
Thank you, Brother Anthony. Thank you, Sister Barbara King. That's it for us this afternoon, this morning, and good evening.